All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. It is Monday, April 22nd. It'll be Tuesday, April 23rd, whenever this episode comes out. I'm Caleb. You can follow me on Twitter at CalebVUA. That's where I'll usually tweet out the show. Didn't tweet it out last week because you know what? I forgot to check the audio before I started recording on the video portion of this podcast. So, didn't have any audio on the video recording. So there was no YouTube video last week. So, yeah, otherwise, I checked this time, made absolutely sure we've got audio this time. So there will be a YouTube video up this week. I apologize for being a dipshit. It's been a long time since I did that, but it is what it is, folks. Today, we have got, we've got some headlines. Pretty much exclusively football headlines. NBA playoffs is going on. Only real news I've got there is that I have placed a future on a particular team to win the NBA title. You can probably narrow it down to two teams just based on how the regular season went. I'm not gonna say on this podcast which one I chose, because last time I chose not to say it, and it worked out to the tune of buku bucks for your boys. So, not gonna break tradition. Not gonna break tradition. Just know I've placed a future on one of these teams in the NBA playoffs. So I'm following that from afar, but this is a football show, so we're going to stay out of that. And it is a football show, but I got a new shirt, folks. I got, talking about, Fisher out, sell the team. This is just, a quick homage to John Fisher, owner of the Oakland Athletics. That goddamn piece of shit. Really bad owner. And yeah, I'd say thank you to Pardon My Take for putting me onto the shirt. Shout out Last Dive Bar over there in the Oakland area with some fantastic merch. You can get your own Fisher Out shirt with a possum holding up a sign that says "Sell the Team" on it if you want to look as good as your boy does right now. But yeah, that's just a quick homage to that piece of shit. You should sell the team. And that next owner should keep it in Oakland because those fans deserve better. But you're going to move it to Las Vegas where they don't even want you anyways. So there you have it. There's your baseball for the day. Also, Aaron Boone got kicked out of a game in the most hilarious fashion possible. No one does power trips like umps in the MLB. It is quite a sight to see. Aaron Boone didn't say a damn thing. There was a fan in the stands that was talking shit to the umpire right behind him. And the umpire threw Aaron Boone out because it came from Aaron Boone's general direction, so it must be Aaron Boone. Yeah, there is no power tripping umps like the MLB power tripping umps, man. They're something. That umpires union. Strong unions are good in one sense. They certainly help out with pay and benefits and job security. But the flip side of that job security is you got a whole bunch of piece of shit umpires that still have jobs that should not have jobs. Angel Hernandez, for one. The guy that threw out Aaron Boone, for two. And there's plenty more outside of that. But that's besides the point. Again, this is a football show. We got headlines, then we're going to move into part 2 of the draft needs special, going through teams 17 to 32 in the NFL rankings, standings, whatever the hell you'd call them. I guess, flip that around. It's really 16 to 1, but draft order. What can I say? So we're getting to some good teams today. So let me get a quick drink of this here Coca-Cola. And then we'll just go right into some headlines. Then we'll get you some draft needs, and then we'll get on out of here. And I'll probably go read a book and fall asleep or some shit. I don't know. Either way, here we go. Man, that is good stuff. I need a caffeine right now, too. Here comes the burp. That'll happen. When you just absolutely annihilate about a third of the Coke that you just brought into the closet. Very specific situation I've laid out, but I digress. Any hoozler, let's go into the headlines here. Things I missed from last week. Forgot to bring this up, but this is hilarious. Ipe Mitsuhara former translator, manager, basically everything for Shohei Ohtani. You know the guy that got caught up in the gambling scandal. He was doing some wild shit with the bets. He placed 19,000 plus wagers with an average wager of, get this, $12,000 per wager at 19,000 wagers. Hundreds of millions of dollars in bets this man placed. Some on credit. Ended up like 45 million in the hole. And yeah, I mean, based on the FBI investigation, Shohei didn't know a damn thing about any of this that was going on. So yeah, Ippei Mitsuhara, scumbag, gambling addict. Call the hotline if you need help, folks. It's there for a reason. That's a wild situation. Absolutely wild situation. So, yeah, watch out, folks, especially if you're a big-time athlete with a bunch of millions of dollars in the bank. Maybe try and learn some English. Just a thought. Try and learn some English. Maybe don't put your entire life in the hands of just one guy. Just a thought. That's pretty much the only thing I missed from last week. Let's get into the headlines. Sparse week of headlines. We are basically with radio silence leading up to the NFL draft. A few things have started popping up here and there. But for the most part, teams are locked in on the draft that is to come. So with that said, not a whole lot of headlines here, but let's just get into it real quick. ESPN dropped an article detailing why Bill Belichick didn't get the job in Atlanta. I mean, there was a wild portion of the article that said, I believe it was Terry Fontenot had a conversation, Terry Fontenot being the GM of the Atlanta Falcons, having a conversation with Robert Kraft saying, hey, you should not hire Bill Belichick. Don't trust anything he says. The validity of those reports have been, speculated back and forth. Just a lot of stuff that tell me that, yeah, I mean, it's good reporting. It's fascinating stuff. Really kind of details out a lot of the internal dissension in the Atlanta Falcons building. Of why Bill Belichick didn't get that job. And ultimately, I don't think he was in the top 4 candidates by the time the process was done. He was behind like Bobby Slowick, and I'm not even sure they really interviewed Bobby Slowick, which is wild to me. But my main takeaway from this is great reporting. Good job by ESPN, everyone involved there. If you can get the information and it's not privileged information, that you have to keep behind, not burning sources barriers, go ahead and write it. The people want to know these things. On the other hand, though, boy, oh boy, there seems to be a horde. I mean a festering, undulating horde of rats in the Atlanta Falcons building. That's the only way an article like this gets put out. And yeah, it really just, it doesn't look good. Sorry, I just got a text, and I already know what the text is going to be about, but it is what it is there, man. What else is new? We'll keep it moving from there. I mean, hey, Arthur Blank seems like a class act dude. It feels like there is just a whole lot of loose lips on the verge of sinking ships there. And with that in mind, it's probably a good thing they didn't hire Bill Belichick, because Bill Belichick would have just cleaned house. Getting said rats off the ship, smoking them out, if you will, getting them out of there, because Bill Belichick ain't abiding all that shit. Feels like basically everyone in the organization had some things to say to ESPN reporters, and yeah, interesting situation to walk into. I hope for the best for Raheem Morris. It doesn't speak well of the culture. A lot like how, I mean, Diana Rossini wrote some stuff about the Jets and their dysfunctional culture. She had like 20-some sources like within the organization. Again, great reporting. If you can get your hands on the information, by all means, get it out there. On the other hand, though, if this information is getting out there, it doesn't speak to a very good culture permeating from the top rungs of the organization. So, I don't know how involved Arthur Blank is in the day-to-day operations. Seems like a class act sort of dude. Does not seem to run a tight ship over there in Atlanta. But hey, again, good article by ESPN. I'll reiterate it for the third time. If you can get your hands on the information, go ahead and put it out. But yikes. Yikes. That's really all I have to say on that front. All right, so what else we got? Yes, this one coming down the pipe just today. Zach Wilson, the erstwhile former starting quarterback of the New York Jets, former number 2 overall pick in that vaunted at the time 2021 NFL draft. 4 of the 5 guys taken at the top of that draft are now on different teams now, by the way. But Zach Wilson is finally being traded from the New York Jets, as it was kind of rumored that he was in the trade block and they were seeking a trade partner really from the outset of the offseason here. He is going to the Denver Broncos. They are swapping a 6th for a 7th round pick. Broncos send a 6th. The Jets send a 7th along with Zach Wilson. Also, they're splitting up the roster bonuses, so there's not so much of a financial burden on the Denver Broncos for taking on Zach Wilson's contract. Ultimately, I mean, of the busts, Trey Lance really only played like 3 games, so he was probably the biggest bust. Coming in right behind him there, hot on his heels, is none other than Zach Wilson. Who would be the best quarterback in that draft? Probably Trevor Lawrence, but even Trevor Lawrence has never lived up to that potential that he seemed to have coming out of Clemson. That's what happens when you go to just a dumpster fire of an organization there down in Jacksonville. But Mac Jones is now on the Jaguars as well. Justin Fields is on the Steelers. Zach Wilson now gets shipped down to the Denver Broncos. There's one more. Oh yeah, Trey Lance is on the Cowboys now. Hell, the Jaguars have 2 of those first-round quarterbacks in the 2021 draft. It just ended up being, you get 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. It just goes to show the draft is an absolute crapshoot. And especially with quarterbacks, it depends a whole lot more on situation than it does on the actual player, which is kind of why it's so wild that Trey Lance didn't work out, because he went into maybe the best situation imaginable. Had some injury stuff where he totally altered his throwing motion, picked up some terrible mechanical habits, and ultimately just tanked his career from there. Was injured nonstop, basically. Just kind of freak stuff, too. He had like a finger injury in practice, finger, wrist, thumb injury, I think, in practice in his rookie year that messed up his throwing motion. Got his ankle broken whenever he finally got the opportunity to get into the lineup. Then Brock Purdy comes in, takes over, and doesn't look back, so he's out of a job. All the other guys were just straight up didn't turn out as they were expected. Mac Jones had that good rookie year, but then, lo and behold, Matt Patricia and Bill O'Brien didn't put him in the best situations. Also, Bill Belichick, again, Bill Belichick, the GM, lost Bill Belichick, the coach's job, and that really came down to the acquisitions and draft picks along the offense, which were far from up to snuff. They were a bottom 5 offensive personnel group, not the very worst offensive personnel group in the entire league. Justin Fields, I feel bad for that guy because he got drafted by a totally different regime. Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, they get fired the year after he gets there, essentially. Year or 2 after he gets there, I can't remember which one. They bring... new guy brings in an offensive coordinator who never seems to kind of work out how to use Justin Fields and kind of mold the offense to his skill set. Tries to force him, square peg, round hole into being a passer. That doesn't work out. I really think that he could work out very well in Pittsburgh still. Could ultimately end up being the best quarterback in that class. But, you look at it, you go down the list. Zach Wilson, what more needs to be said there? I think he had his best games of his career last year, and he wasn't even really that good last year. So, it, again, just goes to show the draft is an absolute crapshoot. Those guys were supposed to be starting quarterbacks for years to come. A vaunted QB draft class where, was that the year that Jalen Hurts came into the draft? No. Couldn't be, because Jalen Hurts has already been extended. I digress on that front. But, yeah, just an absolute crapshoot. Very disappointing QB class overall, and hey, maybe Trevor Lawrence can pick up the slack for the rest of the guys in that group. I have questions. He's shown horrid inconsistency with the accuracy and decision making. So, yeah, again, we'll see what happens with Zach Wilson in Denver. Something tells me it's going to be a whole lot like it was in New York. At the very least, he's got an offensive head coach now that can kind of, coach up a quarterback a little bit. But even Denver's probably in the market for a quarterback in this particular draft. So, yeah, just buyer beware. You should build up a situation before you put a quarterback in there. I know it's so tempting when you're at the top of the draft, as it is for really the Patriots and the Commanders this year. They got terrible offensive situations to throw a rookie quarterback into, but all indications seem that both of them are going to go that direction because they're at the top of the draft. You got really good prospects at the top, so you might as well swing for the fences there. You're putting those guys in god-awful positions, though, to where it's not a very good proposition that anyone you put in those situations is going to be good. Just, again, buyer beware. It's better to build up your situation than even if you have to kind of take a swing on a mid-round guy. If you got the right coaches, you got the right personnel, you got the right offensive line, receivers, play callers, all that sort of stuff, you can kind of get some leeway as to how talented, physically talented the guy you're putting in there is. Just beware of the situation you're putting a quarterback into. More quarterbacks have been ruined by bad situations than quarterbacks that have come in and overcome bad situations. It's basically like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, Peyton Manning. I wouldn't even say that CJ Stroud was in a bad situation because low-key had a solid offensive line, had at least like average wide receiver core, and hit on a draft pick last year in Tank Dell. And Bobby Slowick came in and was like a revelation as the play caller. So I wouldn't even put CJ Stroud in that category. It's like you can count on one hand the amount of quarterbacks that have come in and overcome their situation. It's just simply not how this thing works. They are once-in-a-generation type of players that can come in and overcome everything around them. Even Trevor Lawrence, with how hyped up he was coming out of college, hasn't overcome the situation down there with the Jaguars, and ultimately probably wasn't as good as he was being hyped up. People just got enamored with the 6'6", the ability to run, being a big handsome dude, all that sort of stuff that kind of enamored teams into taking him. But yeah, ultimately, again, buyer beware. This should be a cautionary tale to everyone. That being said, like I said before, Caleb Williams is going into pretty much the best situation for an number one overall pick in, I don't know, probably in the entire millennium of the 2000s so far, which has been 24 years. Jesus, words are hard right now. But the point still stands. I can't remember the last time a number one overall pick was coming into a better situation than what Caleb Williams is going to be coming into a number one overall. But 2 and 3, not good situations at all. Teams are going to keep making this mistake over and over again, banging their head against that brick wall, and really they're never going to learn. But you and I know what's up right now. Situations matter more than raw physical talent, and I will leave it at that. Best of luck to Zach Wilson. I never really thought he was that good coming out of college. That's another one where the scouts just got enamored and didn't watch a lick of film in college. At least not the right stuff. Didn't focus on the right stuff when they were watching that film. I don't want to discount all the high quality scouts that were out there. He should not have been the number 2 overall pick though, and I'm still confused as to why the Jets made that decision. Some rare noteworthy free agency news at this time of year. J.K. Dobbins, formerly of the Ravens, coming off tearing his Achilles in week 1 of last season, is signing a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. He reunites with his running mate in Baltimore, Gus Edwards, that giant of a man running beside him. I have optimism. I hope for the best for J.K. Dobbins. I hope he has a big year, then goes in and cashes in free agency. However, that would fly in the face of history of running backs who have Achilles injuries and their futures in the NFL. You can kind of go back through it. It's not pretty. Not pretty at all. So I'm hoping for the best for J.K. Dobbins. Not exactly expecting it, but Chargers loading up on that backfield. I'd imagine they're going to even add one more of one more running back in the draft, maybe a Braylon Allen or a Blake Corum. Blake Corum, obviously, with the Michigan connection to Jim Harbaugh and all of the people that Jim Harbaugh brought along from Michigan, would make a lot of sense there. I don't think they're done. They're very clearly building a team that's going to run the shit out of the ball and try to play good defense. Serious personnel deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball, but, cross that bridge when we come to it, of course. J.K. Dobbins, best of luck to him as well. Not sure it's going to work out that way, unfortunately. We'll get a transfer portal update here, and then we got 2 more headlines after that. First and foremost, again, not really the wave of big-time players that it was advertised to be, and at this point, I don't know if the wave is coming, which I'm perfectly fine with, quite frankly. I was fully ready to rail against the current iteration of the NCAA, of the transfer portal, and how just totally broken the system is. And, the quietness at this time of year does not change the fact that it is, in fact, broken. There are still players that are going into the transfer portal, make no mistake about it. It's just not the splashy big names that you saw, say, at the end of the college football season back in the fall, at the end of the regular season at that point. So we got a couple here, though, and there are a couple big names. I really just kind of focused on those names. First and foremost, Arizona State quarterback Jaden Rashada. He is in the portal, and just, wow, man. Wow. Maybe I'm judging too harshly. Kenny Dillingham, head coach at Arizona State, had nothing but good words for Jaden Rashada on the way out the door. So maybe he's a good kid. I'm sure he's a good kid. Probably works hard. Probably wasn't going to start at Arizona State just based on reports coming out of spring practice there. So it's a good strategic move. And it's no fault of his own, but his journey has been just the exemplification of modern college football. Committed to Florida. The NIL program there was an absolute shit show. Was originally promised like $10 million, $8 million or some shit like that. That falls through because it was just a house of cards waiting to fall. It was just kind of a paper tiger that never had any sort of growl behind it. He goes to Arizona State because he's kind of in a scramble because he thought that everything was cool at Florida until it wasn't all of a sudden. So he goes to Arizona State. First-year head coach, trying to turn around an abjectly terrible program from the year before. Doesn't play well when he's in there, gets injured as well, sits out the back part of the season. Then he gets outplayed in spring ball. So he's on the road now. Be interested to see where he goes. Maybe you see a place like Miami pop up. They got Ward there now, Cam Ward, who I think is going to be a stud this year at Miami. I think they've got... People sleep on Miami just because the last 2 years have been kind of lackluster. Year 3 in these types of culture build programs where you kind of tear it down at the studs and then build it up, especially at a traditional power like the Miami Hurricanes, it kind of takes 3 years. In that third year, though, you can see some real pop-off happening. And the biggest problem for Miami has been that quarterback position. Cam Ward is a legitimate stud. He kind of got sequestered over there at Washington State. No disrespect to Washington State, but y'all know there's not a whole lot of people watching Washington State games. Half of them kick off at like 10 p.m. Pac-12 after dark, RIP to our king Pac-12, but not a lot of people were watching those games. He's going to get a lot more eyes on him at Miami, and I think there's a good chance he makes a Heisman run this year, especially if he's got a good offensive line in front of him. I think that defense is going to be nasty this year. I think the offense is going to be much improved from what it was under Tyler Van Dyke. I think Miami has a good chance to get 10 wins and make the playoff this year, quite frankly. And, keep in mind that it is the rinky-dink 12-team playoff, but a playoff berth is a playoff berth, and I think Mario Cristobal has that program headed in the right direction. Really good continuity with the coordinators this year. Didn't have to fire anyone like they did in year 1. Didn't have the turnover that they did. So good culture build there. Good recruits coming in. I think this year is the year for Miami. But I don't know if Jaden Rashada is the type of player at this point that can kind of walk into a job and start right away unless he goes to a place like, a G5 school, like say a Rice or UT Chattanooga. That's too far off the beaten path. You know what I'm saying, though. Like go to a Tulane or something. They just lost Michael Pratt. If you want to stay in the Power 5 zone, which I think a former high 4-star guy like Jaden Rashada wants to stay there, maybe take a page out of the Dante Moore playbook there. Go to a place where you're probably not going to start, but you need some development, so might as well go to a place you can develop. I think Miami fits that bill for sure. You can try that at Georgia. I don't know that he's going to crack out into that lineup. Might just be another transfer portal one there, but that's an option as well. I don't know if you're going to necessarily see Jaden Rashada go to a place that he starts. Is the main thing I'm trying to get across there. He was not the only, not the only name in the portal, though. We got one more kind of big one. Former 5-star cornerback that kind of shocked the world by going to Colorado last year as a freshman. Cornerback Cormani McClain is in the portal after a tumultuous year in Boulder. Deion Sanders, I don't think outright said Cormani McClain's name, but did basically everything short of saying Cormani McClain's name when criticizing his practice habits, all that sort of stuff. Didn't have a great role in the defense last year, even though it was bereft of talent, which should tell you a lot about what they're thinking about the way he was practicing. He's put out some statements like, hey, I want to go to a school that and play for not play for clicks, just play for like football and stuff like that. Cool. He's a kid. I feel uncomfortable besmirching the character of 19-year-olds. Maybe not a guy I'd want in my locker room. I'm just saying. If you flame out at Colorado as a 5-star, and you get like serious criticism from Deion Sanders about your practice habits, then you come out talking about counter criticism back about the plan for clicks and all that sort of stuff. Something smells fishy there. He's going to land somewhere. Probably not at the major Power 5 level. Probably goes back to Florida though. He was a Florida product. Maybe you see a UCF, maybe you see a USF in the mix there. I don't know if the big powerhouses there, Florida State, Miami, are going to go for that. But there's a good chance he ends up in the Florida area, something to keep an eye on there. But those are our only two really big additions to the portal. You didn't see the big names that you were hoping for. And again, let's hope it stays that way. We are now a week into the portal portal window opening. I couldn't think of the word there for a second, but let's hope it stays this way. I like to have continuity on these teams, man. That's something I look forward to seeing. Alrighty then. The NBA made a historic decision by handing down a lifetime ban to Jontay Porter. I think we briefly mentioned him a couple weeks ago, but good as a refresher. Jontay Porter was given that lifetime ban for giving out confidential information about his health to gamblers and fixing his own prop bets, essentially. To my knowledge, Porter is the first player in any sport during this modern era of legal sports gambling to get a lifetime ban. This is the type of stance that leagues need to take, though, and I'm not the only one on this boat. I think it's a fairly logical stance to take, but especially now that it's become more easy to access than ever for guys to get into gambling that are in sports, the penalties have to be harsher than they've ever been before. I mean, this is one of those things especially, and this has been really, even when gambling was illegal, this has been a lifetime ban instantly since the dawn of time. If you're fixing games, if you're fixing props, you will be banned for life. I mean, just look at what they did to Pete Rose. He wasn't fixing games per se, but he was gambling at a prolific level. And, I mean, the baseball writers are never going to let that guy in the Hall of Fame. I think his window actually passed, so he will never be in the Hall of Fame there. You've seen the NFL hand out a bunch of indefinite suspensions, year-long bans. And, one of those guys, I think his name was Shaka Toney, defensive end, formerly of the Commies. He got cut right after being reinstated, pretty much. Other guys that were like kind of no-name guys are no longer on teams. Not going to find teams. This is how you have to deal with this stuff. Otherwise, it'll proliferate. So you have to make the consequences of those actions of betting on games within your sport so prohibitively oppressive that guys just simply don't want to do it. They don't have the motivation to do any of that. So I think this is definitely a strong message from the NBA. It's good. But at the same time, this is something that we might never have caught in the old era before there was legal gambling. The main thing is the dude was an idiot. A couple times, I believe, the largest wagers and the largest payouts were to Jontay Porter prop bets, which, if you're putting $80,000 on a Jontay Porter prop bet, which is exactly what happened. Also, it was like a parlay that could have minted out like $1.3 million or something like that the gambler put in there. That's going to raise some eyebrows there. That'll raise some flags. And luckily, with the legal network that is in place, the structure there, sportsbooks see that, they flag it, and they investigate, and eventually they find out, get to the source here, that Jontay Porter was the one that was fixing the game. That simply would not have happened in the old era of illegal sports betting. So it's not all bad. Not all bad there. But, yeah, you're going to keep seeing more and more cases like this of players betting on games, and the penalties are going to be just as harsh every time because they absolutely have to be. This was a good moment for the NBA as far as appearing strong in the face of stuff that could really jeopardize the integrity of the sport. So I like that a lot from Adam Silver. One more headline. The WNBA draft popped off, boys and girls. I believe like a 309% increase year over year from last year of the viewership. The most massive WNBA draft of all time it wasn't even really close. A lot of that has to do with the Caitlin Clark effect. She could be a player that absolutely skyrockets the WNBA into a lot more mainstream areas, a lot more profitable areas for the league. I mean, people were kind of focusing on the rookie contract for Caitlin Clark and all the rookies that are coming in. She's making like $70,000 a year next year on the court. And I think most people rightly responded, go ahead and watch the games and maybe that'll change. And I think Caitlin Clark has the staying power to do that. I think she draws eyes. She puts asses in seats. Some of the highest gate or highest ticket items next year as far as ticket prices in the WNBA are Caitlin Clark games, both at home and on the road. So this is the type of player that can really elevate the league as a whole. So could change here in the near future. Maybe they're not making big time NBA bucks just yet, but maybe the rookies come in making six figures instead of high five figures. It's a start at the very least. Something to get going in the right direction. This could be a transformative player. That's to say the least. Also, you may have seen a video circulating around of Caitlin Clark's introductory press conference there for the Indiana Fever. One real fucking weirdo by the name of Greg Doyle, who I think he works for the Indy Star, I want to say. Just go ahead and look up the video. It's about the most awkward 22 seconds I've seen in my entire life. I'll give you a quick rundown. Caitlin Clark is known for doing this, I'm showing it on the screen now to the YouTube viewers, but she does the heart thing to her family in the stands. So she's known for that. It's kind of one of her hallmarks, I suppose. So Greg Doyle, being the weird fucking dude he is, decides instead of asking a question right out of the gate, he flashes Caitlin Clark the heart sign. She asks, "Ha, you like that?" Kind of an awkward laugh. She's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I do like that. And she says something along the lines, "Yeah, I do it to my family in the stands. It's cool." And then Greg Doyle, making it about as awkward as possible, says, "Well, if you start doing that to me, we'll get along just fine." And I mean, the secondhand embarrassment I feel right now in this very moment, just recapping that. My goodness, I wonder if Greg Doyle has ever been around a woman, if he has ever talked to a woman in just regular everyday life, if he realizes that women are just people, they have boobs, that's for sure, but they're just people. They're just people. Maybe talk to them like a normal athlete. That's just a thought. Maybe don't make things weird as shit, Greg. Just a thought. Man, that's just maybe the most cringeworthy thing I've seen in sports, in the sports space. It's been years since I cringed that hard on social media, man. I crawled out of my skin the first time I watched that video, and I've not gone back and watched it in full ever again. It's horrifying. It's terrible. Greg Doyle should be ashamed of himself, and he should make mandatory 1 to 2 hours a week. Go out to a bar and just talk to people. Not even really just women. Just talk to people, man. Get acclimated into society to where you can talk one-on-one with a person and not come off like a creepy fucking weirdo. That's all I have to say about that. Had to bring that up. Hopefully Caitlin Clark doesn't have weird interactions like that in the future, but being that she's in Indianapolis and Greg Doyle is in Indianapolis as well, I am sure that big fucking weirdo is going to step in it at some point again. Boy, oh boy, can't wait for that. Next awkward 22 seconds coming right up on deck. We'll see how it works out. Either way, that's it for the headlines. Let's go to the draft needs special, shall we? First and foremost, need to take down the last of this here Coca-Cola. Much better than that, just sitting there getting lukewarm while I'm talking up a storm here. So my throat will be dry by the end of this. That's an absolute fact. However, we're just going to try and roll through this. We got verbose on the last episode. Went way longer than I thought we would. So hopefully I can bang through these next 16 teams. No problem, lickety-split, and get y'all out of here in a reasonable amount of time. But we're going 17 through 32 in the draft order standings, I guess. It's reverse NFL standings. We all know how a fucking draft works. You know what I'm talking about. Either way, right smack dab in the middle of the standings, we have got at 17 in the order here, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and their needs are as follows. Excuse me, had to get the burp out of there real quick. All right, so first and foremost, the offensive line. What else is new? Offensive line has been a problem for them since, I don't know, I became a football fan. Really since the age of 12, I don't know that the Jacksonville Jaguars have literally ever had a good offensive line. So that perpetual need still stands. Shout out to Ezra Cleveland. He does kill people, but he's also not that great of a guard. So maybe you want to invest on the interior of the offensive line. So maybe this time around in this season, Trevor Lawrence isn't nursing like 15 different injuries like he was last season. Just a thought, just something to maybe think about. Maybe protect that number one overall pick quarterback that you're about to pay like, I don't know, $50 million a year in this upcoming extension year, because I think he will be eligible for an extension after this season. He might already be eligible, quite frankly. I don't even really know. That being said, you get it. Offensive line. Biggest area of need on the offense. Outside of that, they got Travis Etienne in the backfield. They got good wide receivers, and they just continue to add wide receivers despite any other needs that they have on the offense. So really offensive line. You fix the offensive line and kind of, dial in the play calling a little bit. I think you're good on that side of the ball. Pass rush. They have Josh Allen. Signed him to a massive extension the other week, so that's good. Travon Walker has not worked out as planned. And really, there's just no one else on the outside opposite of Josh Allen. If you compare a pass rusher on the other side of Josh Allen, really get someone in the middle even. If you can get a good defensive tackle at rushing the passer, that would work out as well too. You just need pass rush coming from somewhere. It can't be just Josh Allen out there if you want to really give your secondary a little bit of help out there. That's really what you need to do. And speaking of the secondary, that is the other need on this defense for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They lose Shaquille Griffin last offseason. They lose, I think it's Darius Williams this offseason. Could be wrong. It could be someone else that they lost this offseason. The point is they lose more and more defenders on the back end every year, and they don't really replace them with anybody. So they need secondary players. They need guys on the back end. Based on their defensive needs, Maybe you look at a pass rush option, or maybe you look at a guy like Quinion Mitchell in the first round, someone like that, someone that's going to be available in the middle of the draft. We'll see how that ends up going. Although, with how top-heavy the offensive line draft is this year, maybe you just go ahead and get an offensive tackle or something like that. Maybe spring for a guard later in the draft. That's kind of worked out well for the Rams in the past several years. But I don't know. You could justify really going offensive line or defense in the first round. It kind of just really depends on how your board shakes out when they get to you there at 17. Maybe if someone's dropping, like Byron Murphy, if he ends up dropping somehow in the draft, maybe you trade up for a guy like that. Just get some pass rush up the middle there. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think in the first round could be either of those things. If I had to guess, probably pass rush. That seems right up the Trent Baalke ballpark will be what they do in the first round. Number 18, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a good couple needs here. A lot of them are going to be covered up by Joe Burrow, but not the most durable guy if you can't protect him. So, first and foremost, offensive line. They lose Jonah Williams in free agency last year. They cut Lyle Collins due to health stuff and really not playing up to what his contract was going in there. You need bodies in the offensive line. It's basically just Orlando Brown Jr. and a bunch of guys there right now. So you need bodies there, fresh bodies there, in order to keep Joe Burrow upright. Also, wide receiver. You do still have Jamar Chase. You do still have T. Higgins. T. Higgins will not be there after this year, though. Make no mistake about it. They don't have the money to pay him. They're going to be putting that money towards Jamar Chase. Tyler Boyd, I don't know if he's either a free agent. Either way, he's getting along in the 2, so you need wide receivers in there for sure. So that's what you need on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I'm looking at defensive tackle. I think DJ Reader just went out of town there. Not a whole lot of bodies up front there. You got some good defensive ends on the outside in Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. Need guys in the middle if you want to get a little bit more stout against the run. On that note, too, as well, you need a linebacker and secondary. Just bodies up and down the defense, pretty much. The only real area of need that isn't present on that defense is the pass rush, because you have Hendrickson, you have Hubbard, more of a run stopper, but solid enough in pass rushing situations. You just need bodies up and down that secondary and front seven pretty much. So that's what I'm looking at there for the Bengals. Again, Joe Burrow is going to cover up a lot of these deficiencies, but you need fresh bodies in there if you want to compete this year. Lou Anarumo can only do so much. He's a wizard on the defensive side, but you can only do so much without talent. For the Rams here at number 19, I've got quarterback. Matt Stafford probably has 1 or 2 years left. You need a succession plan there. Now is the time to look into getting a quarterback, probably in the second round. Maybe you get someone in the first round. If a Michael Penix drops in your lap, why not take a flyer on him? Just put him behind Matthew Stafford for a year and see what happens there. And basically, outside of quarterback, I like their offensive line. Kyren Williams is a stud in the backfield. You got Puka Nacua in the mid-rounds last year. They're not a whole lot of stuff to dislike there. I think they got Gerald Everett in free agency too. I mean, they have really good weapons on the offense. They just got to find a succession plan for Matthew Stafford, and the entire defense. At every level needs more players, especially with the retirement of Aaron Donald. He was the linchpin holding everything together. You lose Raheem Morris to the Atlanta Falcons as their new head coach. You need bodies at every single level. Otherwise, that defense is going to be absolute Swiss cheese this year. And at this point, it might end up being Swiss cheese anyways, just because they don't have a very good defensive roster at all right now. It's a bunch of guys there right now. They had young players step up last year. More young players are going to need to step up this year because it's not looking good. The cupboard's looking very bare on that side of the ball. Might be an over team this year. We might have to look at them for betting some overs this year in the NFL. But yeah, every single level of the defense I would see as a potential spot to upgrade there for the Los Angeles Rams. At 20, we have got the Steelers. You could argue quarterback is a need, but they're not going to address it in this draft, so I stayed away from it. Offensive line, still in a rebuild mode there. They got Broderick Jones last year, who I think they're happy with, but you need more bodies there on the offensive line, especially if you're wanting to play that physical Steelers style that they, wanted to play. They got Arthur Smith in there as well. He's going to want to run the rock. One of the more creative run game coordinators in the entire NFL. Don't let that last year with the Falcons fool you. A very, very good run game coordinator, but you need bodies on that offensive line if you want to, support that creativity, if you will. So continue to build there on that offensive line. Wide receiver, they traded away Deontay Johnson this offseason, so it's basically just George Pickens and a bunch of dudes. I think Austin, I forget his first name, but Calvin Austin, I think, that might not be the guy. But I don't know if he's still there or not, but the cupboard is very bare in the wide receiver room there outside of George Pickens, and George Pickens has been less than happy with his role in the offense, and I don't know what it is with the Steelers. They just keep picking up malcontent wide receivers. It is what it is. This is a very deep receiver draft, though. You can get multiple receivers in this draft if you so please, and I think there's a good chance that's going to happen. I'm just not sure it's going to happen in the first round. Since it's a very deep wide receiver class, I think you're looking at round 2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in that range. Not all of those rounds, obviously, but somewhere in that range, you're going to be looking at wide receivers for the Steelers. And secondary, you draft Joey Porter Jr. last year. He seems to be working out, but outside of that, you just need bodies across the board. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a fine safety for sure there on the back end, but you need corners. You probably need another safety next to Minkah Fitzpatrick as well. You just need bodies in the back end, especially with that quarterback-heavy AFC North. You need all the guys back there that you can get, quite frankly. I see the Steelers going with offensive tackle, I would say, in the first round. Someone to put opposite of Broderick Jones at the end of the day. They just don't have, like I said before, it's a top-heavy tackle class, and a lot of tackles are going to go in the first round. And if they really, once you get into the second round, the cupboard is starting to get a little bit bare in the tackle market. So I think the Steelers go tackle in the first round. I think that is probably the way that they go, and they kind of fill out the needs from there throughout the rest of the draft. 21, we have got the Houston Texans here, and they went hard in free agency, man. Nick Caserio, he knew what I was saying when we went into this offseason. He knew it without ever hearing me say it, that this is the most important offseason of his tenure as a Texans GM, and he meant every bit of it. Went and got Danielle Hunter in free agency, went out there and got Stephon Diggs in the trade market, picked up a bevy of other free agents to bolster both the defense and the offense. They're gearing up for a Super Bowl while they have C.J. Stroud on that rookie contract. So they filled a lot of their holes, but they still have a couple areas of need here, particularly interior offensive line. Maybe not the most pressing need in the world, but protect your young QB. Keep C.J. Stroud clean, and he's going to do magic back there. So definitely going to look into offensive line in this draft, particularly interior, looking at center and guard. Maybe not something you look at in the first round, but in the mid-rounds, I'd probably see them picking up some interior offensive line help. Going over to the defense, we're looking at linebacker. They lose Blake Cashman to the Minnesota Vikings in free agency. Also lose Jonathan Grenard to the Vikings in free agency, but they picked up Danielle Hunter, so not a bad trade from their perspective, I would say. They're paying a little bit more for him, but I think they're more than happy to do that, especially with C.J. Stroud on his rookie deal there. So you're looking at linebacker. Cupboard's kind of bare there at linebacker, so you want to bolster it there. And cornerback. Got Derek Stingley. I think Jalen Petrie is a safety, I want to say. So you got good guys in the back end, but especially if you're gearing up for a Super Bowl run, you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, you need as many bodies in that back end as you can possibly get. Derek Stingley is a good start, bit of a hit and miss guy on the outside, good at creating turnovers, but gets burned from time to time as well. So I think that's a pretty big area of emphasis for them. If I had to guess, you're certainly not going linebacker in the first round, just based on, one, the lack of depth at the linebacker position in this draft, and two, just the devaluing of the position of off-ball linebackers, so that's probably not it. Like I said, interior offensive line is probably a mid-round concern, so I'm looking at cornerback in that first round. You're probably looking at Maybe a Nate Wiggins in that spot there at 21, although they're not going to be in the first round. So maybe you pick up a corner in the second round. I forgot that they traded their pick to the Vikings. I apologize for that. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see what it all kind of looks like there. I don't know. I don't know how that all works out, quite frankly. But yeah, I'm interested to see what ends up happening. I'll say that. I think they go with cornerback whenever their first pick comes up. I believe in the second round, though. That's my feel on the situation. Maybe they go interior offensive line, but we shall see. Number 22, we've got the Dolphins. First and foremost, I'm looking at wide receiver depth. Really, after you get past Tyreek and Jaden Waddle, not a whole lot of depth there. They lost a lot of depth in free agency. I think Braxton Berrios is kind of slated as the third right now. And in a deep wide receiver draft, I would anticipate somewhere in the middle rounds they're going to pick up one of these big-time receivers. Xavier Worthy, just based on Mike McDaniel's type, is the exact type of guy that I would expect to go to Miami. You just keep adding in fast-ass wide receivers. Xavier Worthy would fit that system like a glove, man. You'd be seeing bombs to him right down the sideline. I'm thinking that's a later in the draft problem, though, if I'd have to guess. Offensive line, I think that's the big issue they need to fix right out of the gate. That's where I think they're going to go in the first round. Probably look into that tackle market a little bit there. We'll see how it's looking, how the cupboard is looking there at 22, but offensive line would be my guess in the first round. Then on the defense, we got defensive line and corner. Lose Christian Wilkins in free agency. Xavier Howard was let go from the team as well. So it's an interesting time there on the defensive side of the ball. They lost a lot of guys in this past offseason, man. That defense, oh boy. I mean, they lose Vic Fangio too as well. That defense is looking rough right now. So really, if you're drafting based on need, I would say, I mean, offensive line and just the entire defense pretty much are your first and foremost priorities there. I'd say defense might be even more pressing concern. So again, it's one of those things where you trust your draft board, take whoever's best available at that spot, but you're hoping it's offensive line or defensive tackle, cornerback, one of those things available at 22. That's kind of my reading there for the Miami Dolphins. My goodness, my eye itches. Goodness gracious. All right, so 23, we got the Philadelphia Eagles. We're looking at wide receiver depth right now. It's A.J. Brown and it is Devontae Smith, and that's it right now. Again, very similar situation to the Dolphins where they got their top two and not a whole lot behind it. Again, deep wide receiver class. They're going to find someone in there. Maybe you get a Xavier Legette if you're looking for that type of guy in there. Might end up being sneaky if he goes to the right situation. Xavier Legette might be the best wide receiver to come out of this draft. That's my hot take right now. So that might be a guy that the Eagles look into. Interior offensive line, obviously you lose Jason Kelce. We'll see what they do at the center position if they're, stick with the succession plan that they had before going in. Is it Cam Jurgens that's in there? Now I can't remember exactly who, but I mean, even the guard positions probably need to be bolstered. Landon Dickerson's a fine player, but that other guard position's looking iffy. So that's something to look into as well. Defensive line depth, for sure. Especially with the retirement of, oh God. He went to Mississippi State. I don't know why I'm thinking Jefferson. His name's not Jefferson. Oh my God. I can't believe. I can't. Fletcher Cox. My goodness. I don't know why I thought Jefferson. But yeah, he retired. I'm an idiot. I apologize. So with his retirement, he got some good guys stepping in. The two Georgia players in Jordan Davis and oh my God, Jalen Carter. Names are hard today, folks. There are just so many names flitting through my head. But after that, not a great deal of depth on that defensive line. Pass rusher looks nice right now. It always does. It seems to be a point of emphasis for Howie Roseman. Linebacker. Nakobe Dean not worked out quite as good as I thought he might work out. So probably want to look into that as well. Not the greatest draft to be looking into linebacker, but there are a few players out there like Peyton Wilson out of NC State. Got a couple other guys that are kind of, cream of the crop there as well, so to speak. It's a mid-round sort of concern there. Cornerback, they're getting long in the tooth right now. Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Not the youngest guys in the barn right now. So they're again, cupboard looking a little bit bare past them. You need to start looking at succession plans for those guys, and you need cornerbacks right now. You need cornerbacks out there. Otherwise, those guys are going to be, they're going to get past their prime. They already kind of are past their prime, and then you're going to be left with a defense that's just scrambling for answers. You're going to obviously be better than when you were last year, just by virtue of the addition of Vic Fangio. But it'll help to give him some bodies to work with for sure. As far as what I'm thinking in the first round for the Philadelphia Eagles, I feel like cornerback might be the way that they end up going. That seems like the one where the value is going to be best for them, where they're picking in the first round. Might be a situation where they just trade back. Honestly, I don't know. It doesn't feel like they're in an exactly advantageous position to pick up a top line defender in that spot. Maybe one of the defensive linemen drops to them and they can snatch them up as well. Would be kind of, would fit the mold of what Howie Roseman usually does. I just don't think they go offense in the first round. I think you can get enough value on that later, especially with their areas of need, that I feel like they probably go defense in the first round if they stay pat, which no guarantee whatsoever on that front. Number 24, the Browns. They got a couple here. Really a solid roster from top to bottom, so it's really only a couple. First and foremost, center. I think they're starting Ethan Posich right now. After they cut their longtime center. I can't remember his name right now. I apologize to that man. Outside of that, every other part of the offensive line is golden. One of the best units in the entire league if you fix that center position. But center is certainly an area of need that they need to address. Linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a stud, but you need to kind of put some players around him for sure. That's an area of need I'm looking at. Outside of that, though, I mean, really good receiving core. Nick Chubb, hopefully he comes back looking good, but Jerome Ford looked pretty good in his stead last year. You got stars at basically every level on the defense. I mean, Myles Garrett. You got Ward there on the outside, Denzel Ward. Just studs everywhere. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, like I talked about before. You've got a lot of really good players at all levels of the team, quite frankly. But one last one, low-key, quarterback. If the nasty man keeps playing like shit, you got to start thinking about it. I know you paid like a prohibitive sum to get him, but what he's been doing right now ain't going to cut it. If he does one more season like he has the last two, you have got to start looking at the draft at quarterbacks. I'm not sure this is this year's draft possibility. Maybe they do pick up a quarterback in the mid rounds, though. There's no guarantee that they won't. Deshaun Watson's been terrible since coming over to the Browns, so it would fill my heart with joy to see his career collapse after being that big old scumbag that we all know he is. Don't need to relitigate that, but I think we can all agree, fuck Deshaun Watson. Anyways, what I'm looking at for them in the first round, well, they don't even have a first round pick, so I think they're still paying up from that trade for Deshaun Watson. Good for you to get, pay 3 first round picks for a man that is purportedly nasty. So yeah, good for y'all. I'm sure you really don't regret that buyer's remorse at all. But yeah, probably looking. I mean, linebacker and center are both positions that would be better served taken in the middle rounds. If I had to guess, center's probably the more pressing issue. Linebacker, I'm just not sure there's a linebacker that's gonna crack the first 2 rounds. Maybe start looking at linebackers in round 3, but there's just too many good offensive players in this draft. Too many good defensive linemen, too many good cornerbacks to really start taking linebackers that early in the draft. So Maybe center is where they go first. Maybe they just start bolstering depth at other positions. I mean, it's a deep wide receiver class, so I wouldn't blame them to just, keep tacking on wide receivers to that, especially when you got a shitty QB. Helps to have as many wide receivers as possible. So I could really see the Browns going any direction in their first pick. Excuse me. Very gassy with the absolute yugging of that Coke. Number 25, we got the Cowboys. Just a bevy of needs on this team. I mean, they lost Tony Pollard, so running backs obviously one. I think Deuce Vaughn is slated to be the starter, and he is diminutive, to say the least. Offensive line, they lost, Tyron Smith, just a bevy of guys along the offensive line. It's not nearly what it once was. Outside of that, wide receiver, not looking good out there as well. I mean, it's CeeDee Lamb and just a bunch of dudes right now. Michael Gallup really never fully recovered from that ACL injury. He looked like a stud before that and just never kind of got back to that form. And Jalen Tolbert has not lived up to his drafting position, 3rd round a couple years ago. Defensive tackle, they're not looking great there as well. Linebacker Leighton Vander Esch just retired, so that's a big one. They could really stand to improve kind of across the board. Their saving grace is that they have Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons, 2 absolute studs that can kind of anchor each side of the ball. This Cowboys team, remember when Jerry Jones said he was going all in? That was a lie. That was a bold-faced lie. That was just lying directly to the fans' face. But yeah, plenty of holes on this Cowboys team. In the first round, I think they're going tackle. That just seems like a classic sort of... I mean, say what you will about Jerry Jones. I don't think he's truly serious about winning at this point, more than he is about making money, quite frankly. But he does do very well in first rounds. Mozzie Smith hasn't necessarily worked out like a stud from last year, but before that, his track record has been very good on first-round picks. He picks the first round basically every year. I would anticipate he's going to go with an offensive tackle here in this one. And we'll see if there's any left by the time they pick, but I would anticipate that the Cowboys are probably going to go in the offensive tackle direction if I had to guess there in the first round. You can get value on running backs later, wide receivers later, defensive tackles later, linebackers really only place you're really going to get equivocal value is later in the draft. So biggest pressing area of need is going to be that offensive line early in the draft, so you can kind of snap those guys up before you're looking around. There's no one left to dance with at the bar. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking for the Cowboys. Number 26, we have got the Green Bay Packers. Boy, are they a good team right now. I mean, Jordan Love is looking like a stud. Wide receiver core is the youngest in the league and very, very good. Defense, got some stuff to work on, but let's just get into it, shall we? Offensive line depth is what I'm looking at here on the offense, and that's pretty much the only area of need that I'm looking at there on the offense. Everything else is pretty good. You just, David Bakhtiari's gone. He's kind of been gone for the last several years, just still on the roster. But you need offensive line depth, especially with a young quarterback. Keep him clean. Especially Jordan Love, you keep him clean, he can do some magic with that arm. He's got an absolute hose, and he's shown some very good accuracy. Especially down the stretch, he came into form in a big, big way, especially rolling into the playoffs and just blowing the Cowboys out of the water last year. So keep him clean, get some offensive line. Honestly, that's probably where the Packers are going to go in the first round. But also, they got need at linebacker. Devondre Campbell is out of town. Quay Walker is a tackling machine, but not necessarily the most consistent in the coverage aspect. You need another linebacker in there. That's probably a mid-round concern. The other area I think the Packers could go in the first round is corner, though. Right now, Jair Alexander is obviously their number one corner. You got Xavier McKinney on the back end to help out there. But really, they need more corners on the outside. So I feel like if there's a really good offensive tackle that's still available, or really just offensive lineman still available in the first round when the Packers pick later in the first round, might be the direction that they go. But don't be surprised if they pick cornerback in the first round. This doesn't feel like a year, once again, doesn't feel like a year where they're going to get an offensive weapon in the first round. They don't need one, by the way. They've done very well picking high middle draft picks and turning them into absolute studs. They've done it year after year pretty much, so hats off to them there. Feel like cornerback, I'm kind of leaning towards cornerback for the Packers in the first round, especially if one of those guys like Nate Wiggins is still available somehow there later in the first round. That feels like the direction that they're going to go. And that's kind of their most pressing need, I would say, at this point. Everything else, I mean, the Packers are a really, really good team. They're going to challenge with the Detroit Lions this year for that division title for sure. And, I mean, that NFC North is going to be nasty. We'll get to it more when we get into, like, division previews. But that NFC North is just filthy, disgusting. 27, we got the Buccaneers. Wide receiver I'm looking at there. Mike Evans is still good. He is still there. Everyone else is getting long in the tooth. Chris Godwin, not quite the player he once was. Russell Gage did not work out at all, really. They need more bodies there on the outside, especially with Baker Mayfield there. You want to give him as much help as possible, so that's what I'm looking at there. Offensive line, I think for sure is an area of need. It's been kind of a nagging area of need for the last couple years, really going back to when Tom Brady was there. Offensive line was a big need, so that's going to be something that they look into. Edge and linebacker, for that matter, really just like the front seven minus the defensive tackles. You lose Barrett this offseason. He was kind of long in the tooth. You cut him. At linebacker, you're getting long in the tooth there. Really, you're just kind of getting old across the defense. So you need to kind of, especially in the front seven, you need to replenish that a lot, I would say. And cornerback. They don't really have a whole lot at cornerback right now. I think they got like one or two guys that you can really count on, and that's basically it. I think they got Carlton Davis, I want to say, is the guy that they have on the outside. Not really a guy that you want to look at as like your number one surefire corner there. They lost Sean Murphy-Bunting last year's offseason. He was a solid player for him. Really just replenishing each position on the defensive side of the ball would be a good thing. I mean, they got a couple guys there. They got Antoine Winfield, Jordan Whitehead, so a good tandem of safeties kind of cover you up on the back end. But that front seven, I would say, especially in the areas of pass rush, is what you really should be looking at there on the Buccaneers side of things. As far as the first round goes, I feel like especially late here in the first round, I feel like you're looking at a situation where the premium offensive line prospects, many of them are going to be off the board. Obviously, if there's still one of them available, I think that's the first thing you look at here. I think later in this round, though, I think the coverage is going to be a little bit bare. This might be a spot where you start seeing a little bit of a run on wide receivers that may have otherwise gone in the second round. That might start doing a run here. I could definitely see the Bucs going wide receiver in the first round here. That would make a whole lot of sense in my mind. Just based on the needs that they have, the quarterback that they have in there. He had a great year last year, but you need more weapons around Baker Mayfield to get the optimal Baker Mayfield, quite frankly. So I feel like wide receiver is the area that they're going to go there. Number 28, we have got the Buffalo Bills. Again, massive attrition this offseason. They got a bevy of needs on that team. So, I mean, I'm looking at wide receiver. Obviously, you lose Gabe Davis. You lose... not Trevon Diggs, Stephon Diggs. Don't know why that name escaped me. He was with the Vikings for a long time. You lose both of those guys. Not really a whole lot there right now. They're going to draft wide receivers, just a matter of where they do it. Offensive line, lose a couple guys this offseason there as well. I mean, depth is huge for the Bills there in this one. Definitely get offensive linemen in there. Edge, Von Miller is looking old at this point. Gregory Rousseau is the more viable option, but he's inconsistent. Edge is definitely an area you're going to have to look at there. Get some pass rush in there for sure. Linebacker depth right now, not fantastic. Matt Milano is there, but he needs a lot of help there in that one. And I'm looking at safety. You lose both of your starting safeties this offseason. I believe Taylor Rapp is still in the fold there, so he's going to have to step in there. Maybe it's not Taylor Rapp. I can't remember. They picked up someone from the Rams last offseason. I apologize to that man. But you need more guys in the back end there for sure. Cornerback, You lose Tre'Davious White, but you still got a couple guys that you drafted there from the last couple of years, so I don't think it's as pressing of a need, but still, really across the roster on the defense, you need more bodies in there, quite frankly. As far as the first round goes, again, this is another spot where I think the Bills go wide receiver. I don't know who they end up getting, but this late part of the first round, I think you could start seeing a run on wide receivers. You got like, really, I see from teams 27 to 32, I have every single one of them have wide receiver marked down as a need. And by this point, I feel like the offensive line is going to be, just about bare. Maybe you have a couple of edge players that, drop into your lap there that you can consider there as well. But this feels like a spot where wide receiver is going to be a thing for the Buffalo Bills. 29, we've got the Detroit Lions. Not really a whole lot of needs, but a couple areas they can tweak. Wide receiver, they have a solid wide receiver core. They have a legit number one there in Amon-Ra St. Brown. They need a bona fide number two. Jamison Williams has just not worked out that way. He's a big boomer bust guy. They need a consistent second wide receiver there that they should look into. This is one of those teams where I'm not sure they go wide receiver in the first round, though, because it is a need. It's not the most pressing need in the world, though. Guard, I'm looking at there. I simply don't believe in Kevin Zeitler. I apologize to that man, but I don't believe in him whatsoever. And that's an area where, that is the straw that stirs the drink for this offense is that elite offensive line for the Detroit Lions. So I think they're probably going to attack that in this draft to make sure that offensive line stays elite. Not resting on their laurels there. Looking at edge on the defensive side of the ball, Aiden Hutchinson is a stud, but Aiden Hutchinson needs help, to say the least. So they need to get another consistent rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. I'm looking at cornerback as well. Still probably another player or two away from completing that full secondary rebuild that they've been working on there over the last 2 off seasons. If they can kind of figure that out in the secondary, maybe get one more good rusher in there to rush opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, this Lions defense could be nasty next year, man. They're not really that far off with what they have in the building. They could use some more players, but they've got a couple studs over there that can really impact a defense that I don't think the Lions are very far off at all on that side of the ball. And obviously offensively, they are what they are. They're studly on that side of the ball. So as far as the first round goes, again, we're just going to have to wait and see how the board shapes out. This might be a spot where I see him either going edge or corner. This defensive side of the ball would be something that would make a lot of sense. Rakestraw from Missouri could be a guy you look at there as well, kind of, slotted as a later first round guy. Really, any of those cornerbacks that are available, they would all be worthwhile. See what's going on at the edge. I'm not sure how the depth looks at the edge position, but certainly I'm thinking defense in the first round for the Lions. Ravens here at number 30. I'm looking at wide receiver for sure. You lose Odell Beckham this past year. Who knows what you're getting in Rashad Bateman in a given week, whether he'll be healthy or not. Zay Flowers is a stud, but you still need more receivers there for Lamar Jackson to work with, quite frankly. Offensive line, they lost a bevy of offensive linemen in this free agency period via free agency, trades, all that stuff, kind of salary cutting maneuvers there. So that's an area of need. Looking at defensive line, you retain Justin Matabuike, but you're still in need of more bodies on that side of the ball. Edge, for sure you need edge. Not really the big heavy hitters on the edge right now. Inside linebacker, you lose Patrick Queen. That's the main thing. You want to get another running mate for Roquan Smith in there. And cornerback depth. You got Marlon Humphrey. You got a couple other solid guys out there, but you need a little bit more depth on that area. This is another team where I think wide receiver is very much in play there at the end of the first round. I think you can either get a trade back from the Ravens or you get a wide receiver here. Either way, I feel like at that spot, a wide receiver is probably going to be taken in all likelihood. So, especially with the needs of the Ravens, Lamar Jackson being in the prime of his career, I think the Ravens are going to opt for more help for him on the outside, if I had to guess. 49ers here at 31. Their needs are wide receiver, especially in light of Brandon Ayuk maybe not being there. You got Debo and Ayuk right now, but beyond that, not a great deal of talent there. And it's a different sort of situation for the Niners because Kyle Shanahan's just so good at scheming these guys open. It almost doesn't matter in a lot of situations. And George Kittle just absolutely punishes teams too. So it's not the most pressing area of need, but it is an area of need for sure. Offensive line, I would say, is probably the biggest area that needs to be fixed, really on the entire team, I would say, for the San Francisco 49ers. They can't just rely on Trent Williams to just be there week after week, hoping that he doesn't get injured as he gets, later and later into his 30s. They need to really put a concerted effort into building an offensive line that can, support this versatile running game. A lot of this stuff is scheme specific to where you don't necessarily need elite offensive linemen. But Trent Williams shows you week after week, having an elite offensive lineman in there just makes your offense basically unstoppable. So that is the biggest area I would say on the entire team that the 49ers need to address as far as I'm concerned. On the defense, really just looking at depth at the cornerback. Everything else, they're still nasty on defense right now. They got the best linebacker duo in the entire league, and they got an insurance policy picked up in Devondre Campbell if Dre Greenlaw doesn't come back the same player, or he doesn't come back very quickly, or, takes a while to kind of reacclimate to the lineup. You got that insurance policy there. You got a disgusting defensive line. You got an absolute maniac on the back end in Talanoa Hufanga. Really good secondary outside of him. I mean, the defense is a bunch of studs. You just got to get some cornerbacks on the outside right now. That's the main thing I would look at, especially if you're trying to make a Super Bowl run. You're going up against Patrick Mahomes again. You need more bodies on the outside if you want to even have a hope of stopping that guy. As far as the Niners, I would say offensive line there in the first round. That feels like the spot where, okay, time to spend a little bit of capital there on offensive line. Again, I've said it a couple times now, but it all kind of comes down to what your board says. If the only offensive linemen there are ranked in like your 40s or 50s, you obviously don't reach for one, I would say. But if there's someone within that reasonable range, maybe you have to reach a couple spots. Like maybe you got a guy ranked at like 35 to 40 maybe, 38 or something. That would be okay to reach up and get that guy just to make sure you got him on your team. You need bodies on that offensive line. So I feel like that's the direction where the Niners are probably going to go. And rounding this thing out, we have got the Chiefs, the reigning Super Bowl champions, coming off of an improbable Super Bowl run, but just shows you how great that defense was, how great Chris Jones was, and how brilliant Patrick Mahomes is. So I'm looking at wide receiver. Obviously, Hollywood Brown steps in there and is probably your number one wide receiver. Who knows what the deal is with Rashee Rice? There's a suspension looming somewhere along the lines, but who knows how fast the legal process will work out. Is he going to jail? You feel like probably not, but it's not a guarantee either. A lot of uncertainty there. This feels like a spot in the first round, just kind of spoiler alert, that the Chiefs are probably going to go wide receiver right here. That feels like the way to go. Also looking at tackle right now. They don't really have a very reliable left tackle at this given time. So that is certainly an area they could look at as well if one of those tackles kind of drops unexpectedly in the first round. That's certainly an area they could go as well. Linebacker, you lose Willie Gay this offseason. That hurts. They had Drew Tranquil step up in a big way throughout the course of last season, kind of run Willie Gay out of the starting lineup as the season went along. So maybe not the biggest area of need, but maybe, something to look at later in the draft when it's a little bit more favorable as far as the value proposition works. And secondary, obviously. You lose L'Jarius Sneed. You've drafted very well over the last couple of years, but safeties are a bit iffy. You need more bodies to replace what L'Jarius Sneed brought to you. Secondary in general seems like an area that the Chiefs really need to address this offseason. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, the champs is the champs right now, man. And I just feel like they're going wide receiver in the first round. I don't know if it'll be like a Ladd McConkey type. Maybe this is an area where you look at Xavier Worthy maybe coming in. They're going to have some options there. It's a really, really deep wide receiver class. So I'm interested to see what they end up doing there. That's where I'm looking at for the Chiefs, wide receiver in the first round. And yeah, with that's all we got for you, folks. Nice, compact, about hour 20 whenever I get done bloviating with this outro here. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. We do this thing once a week in the off seasons, every Tuesday. Tune in to hear my dumb ramblings on sports. Go ahead, subscribe wherever you're listening to this on, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, wherever you're listening to it. Hit subscribe, share with a friend, help me grow this thing a little bit, please, and thanks. Twitter, CalebVUA. You can follow me there on Twitter. And if you want to contact the show, you can either shoot me a DM on Twitter or go to the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Links for both the Twitter and the email will be in the description. With that said, thank you all so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I've got no clue what I am talking about at any given moment, really. One thing I learned this week, though, Jackie Robinson, yes, the one that broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball, still holds the school record at UCLA for yards per carry with 12.2 in the 1939 season. Granted, he only had 42 carries, but still, absolutely wild. Crazy stat, something I had no idea about until I heard about it on one of those random podcasts I listened to. With that, though, have a good one, folks. I will see y'all on next Tuesday when we are reacting to the draft. Deuces.